My influence has been rather limited, you see, because of my language, of the Bengali language, you see. You can see, you can show my films only in West Bengal and some of the big cities like Madras, Delhi and Bombay with English subtitles. So the influence has not been very wide. Actually, I'm more a name than a... I'm not known by my films at all. I think lots of... Now, thanks to the Film Society movement, my films are getting to be known in our other provinces as well. But formerly, for a long time, I was just a name outside of West Bengal.
At what point did you start to really become more interested in film than in advertising?
Well, actually, I started as a film fan. I was subscribing to magazines like Picture Goer and Photoplay and Film Pictorial, and I was more interested in the stars and reading about them, the doings and all that. But there came a point around the early 40s, I think, that I got interested in directors and the particular kind of stamp that they left on their work.
The coffee houses of Calcutta are where young film enthusiasts met in the 1940s to talk about movies. They formed the Calcutta Film Society, borrowing prints of European films from embassies in the city and screening them on borrowed projectors in their own flats. They despised the Indian cinema of the time, and they talked about how they might make films of their own.
I was sent to England in 1950 by my agency to work at the head office in London. And it was then that I saw the first neorealist films and a whole lot of Italian films and other films as well. I saw about 100 films in 6 months. And it was the neorealists which convinced me that you could work with non-professionals, you could work entirely on location. You didn't have to worry about surface quality so much as the human content. And that was what eventually Pathapanchali aimed at, doing that kind of a film.
Pathapanchali is a classic Bengali novel. Ever since he first read it, Ray had wanted to make it into a film. When he got back from London, he fired a group of friends with the idea, and they set out to find a location in a village outside Calcutta. Ray put his own savings into it, and they managed to shoot a third of the film before production ground to a halt. Producer after producer turned Ray down, but by a lucky chance, the footage he had shot was seen by the Chief Minister of Bengal. The title, Pathapanchali, means the Song of the Little Road. Ray was able to resume filming with a grant from the Government Road Improvement Department. More than a year after they had abandoned the filming, the entire unit reassembled here in the village location, a house Ray had rented through a friend for 50 rupees a month. He had now paid it for 2 years. Over the next 6 months, they completed the shooting. Like Ray himself, none of the team had ever made a film before.
I'm about halfway onwards till the end. By that time, with all the long gaps in between, we learnt a lot. We looked at the footage again and again, and we learnt by our mistakes. And in the end, of course, the second half is very fluent and effective, I think. We were able to achieve more or less what we wanted.
I see what you mean, but I'm surprised that you're dissatisfied with the first half as you are.
Well, I am.
Although she has a minor role, the real star of Pathapanchali is the old aunt, India, played by Chunibala Devi. She was also one of the few professionals Ray used in the film.
We looked for old women in villages and things, but I felt that they wouldn't be able to memorize their lines, you see. They were sort of senile, very old. Women were I didn't have the confidence working with such people. So I went to Chunibala Devi, and she turned out to be in full possession of her senses.
2 by 1, take 1.
Action.
এটার কি নাম দেওয়া যায় বলতো? সাপকে দেওয়া চলে না।
Cut. Fine.
আরেকটা নিয়ে নি ভাই, আরেকটা নিয়ে নি, just one more. এই হাতটা লাস্টে ওঠাটা না, আরেকটু রিল্যাক্স।
The film industry in Calcutta is modest in comparison to the main centres of Madras and Bombay. Ray is one of the few serious dramatists working here. He has managed to produce films of great technical quality by always working with the same small team, each of whom he has encouraged to perfect their particular craft.
I have a way of working which they get to know in course of time, and which makes it very easy for me, because it makes constant instructions unnecessary.
During the 1960s, you made a film a year at least. Was that partly to keep the unit together?
Yes, that was, I would say that was 50% of the reason. The rest, I was getting ideas and chancing upon new material which demanded filming, which I got interested in. And so the average has been more or less one film a year over the years.
Ray was born into a cultured, middle-class Calcutta family, a family of scholars, musicians and writers. The Western influences were strong. They played cricket, they experimented with photography and photo engraving. His Victorian grandfather started a pioneer printing business. Ray's father was a well-known writer of nonsense verses, not unlike the work of Lewis Carroll. He died when Ray was only 2.5, and his widow and her family brought up their only son, Satyajit.
I read the usual subjects. First of all, I read science, physics, chemistry, mathematics and all. And later, for my BA, I went into arts, humanities.
But like other educated Indians, Bengalis particularly, do you feel that you are very much a product of this cultural fusion?
I do, very strongly. Very strongly. I'm absolutely confirmed that I'm myself, I'm what I am because of my being familiar with both cultures.
Do you feel Indian enough as a consequence?
Well, I can be Indian enough if the need arises.
Ray studied art at the university set up by Tagore to revive Indian culture. He left after 2 years, convinced that he didn't have the talent to become a great painter, and he started to look for a job in wartime Calcutta. The best prospects for a young artist were in advertising, and he found a post in one of the British agencies, D.J. Keemer. He worked there for 13 years.
I joined as a visualizer, junior visualizer, and learned advertising, learned layout, learned lettering, learned illustration more or less while I was working.
What sort of campaigns were you working on?
Well, tea, biscuits, motor car tires, and gramophone, and cigarettes, and that sort of thing. And it was quite exciting work in the beginning. But having to contend with the clients, it was very unpleasant, actually. There were some very foolish people involved there, which is one of the reasons why I eventually lost interest in advertising.
In the second film,
The death of the father you treat in a
Death of the
visually
father
symbolic
is,
way.
yes, well, there I had the pigeons established right in the beginning of the film. And I observed this phenomenon of these pigeons sort of gathering on these platforms and then suddenly taking off. And and then circling in the sky. It was a very interesting visual experience. Son and a widowed mother is something which I have felt myself very strongly in my own childhood. And therefore, I think I understood Opu's situation very well in Paparajito, and also the mother's reactions and mother's attitude to the son who's growing up and away from her. The mother can see. But when I decided to make The World of Opu, I wanted the house to be right on the railway tracks. So the train is no longer a lyrical element, it's a rather harsh element in the story.
In the final film, Opu marries a young girl from a prosperous country family and brings her back to the tenements of Calcutta. They begin their marriage as complete strangers, but they gradually fall in love.
I particularly liked the marriage scenes in The World of Apu. Did you enjoy doing those scenes?
Yes, very much so. And I knew that the tragedy was in the offing, you know, and she would die. So I wanted the scenes of marriage to be very lyrical and happy, to provide the contrast for what was coming. In a film which has very little dialogue, objects become more important, and objects which have significance and which tell a story, let us say. You should remember that in an Indian film, in a Bengali film, at that time, we couldn't show any very close contact. No kisses, no embraces, nothing of the sort. And yet I had to make it intimate, make the scenes intimate.
হা করে দেখছো কি? আমি কি নতুন নাকি?
The World of Opu was an immediate box office success, and Ray's international reputation as a director was assured when the second film, Oporajito, was awarded the coveted Golden Lion Award at the Venice Film Festival.
I was absolutely elated by the success, and I had very tough competition also. There was Kurosawa, there was Visconti, Fred Zinnemann, they were all there. And to win the top prize at Venice was something very exciting, very, very exciting.
And in choosing your subjects for subsequent films, have you been aware of this Western audience as much as the Bengali audience, or?
My first audience is the Bengali audience, and I think in terms of an ideal audience, an audience who would follow what I was trying to do, would understand what I was trying to do. I don't think of the West so much.
Very few directors other than Ray have successfully challenged the monopoly of the commercial Indian cinema, whose lavish action pictures are simply vehicles for their popular stars. Over the years, Ray has built up a personal repertory company. His actors come either from the stage or are amateurs chosen by him often for their physical appearance. Some of his most accomplished amateurs have been children. One of the youngest of them plays Opu's son in the final film of the trilogy.
The boy was very young. Actually, he was 4.5 or 5. No, not 5, 4. So he had to be directed in great detail while the shot was running, while the camera was running, constant instructions as to do this, do that. But he looked so right for the part. Certain things he was quite familiar with, like killing a bird with a slingshot and doing mischievous things like throwing that bird into the old woman's lap and that sort of thing. He was quite good at those things.
The boy has been abandoned by Oppu after the young wife he loved has died in childbirth.
দাদুকে বলে দেবে
তবে না তোমার পিঠে ঘা কত না পড়লে তোমার শিক্ষা হবে কেন
তোমার মুন্ডু ভেঙে দেবে
কি বললে মুন্ডু ভেঙে দেবে কে
আমার বাবা কলকাতায় থাকে
হ্যাঁ বাবা কলকাতায় থাকে তবে আর কি তোমার বাবার ভয়ে একবারে গর্তে সেঁধিয়ে গেল কলকাতায় থাকে বলে 5 বছর বাবার টিকিটই দেখা নেই বাবা ভারী বাবা মুন্ডু ভেঙে দে
বাবার বুঝি টিভি থাকে
I get on very well with children. I treat them as adults and usually give them whispered instructions. And nobody's on the set is allowed to mollycoddle them or do anything which sort of, they're left alone more or less. And I treat them as adults.